Hi everybody, Joe Cioffi on this Monday, May the 21st, 2018, coming up on 6 o'clock Eastern Time. I figured might as well jump on a couple of minutes early and get things underway. We are starting to think that we're going to see something develop in the Gulf of Mexico, I think, or in the Northwest Caribbean, and then eventually finding its way into the Gulf of Mexico later this week. You can see on the maps that I have, you've got the satellite to the left, you've got the southeast radar down to the bottom of me, and all pretty busy. I'm going to start with the radar of what's going on right now, because the rain has been particularly heavy across Florida over the last several days or more, and I think that's going to continue pretty much all week into the Memorial Day holiday weekend. And as we take a look, there are some heavy downpours. It's not a continuous solid coverage of rain, but certainly some heavier downpours are coming up from the south, off the southwest coast of Florida, and also up and down both the west and the east coast, and then scattered about in the interior. Many areas in parts of southeastern Florida picking up 10 inches of rain during the last several days or more. There's been some flooding issues, power outage issues, and so on. Well, this is all part of this tropical, this trough that is set up. It's not quite tropical in terms of its nature, and I just want to bring up the satellite view. This is the visible satellite picture from just about 5 o'clock Eastern time, I believe. So we are seeing some rather interesting activity going on at the moment. We've got some thunderstorms that are going on along the Texas coast. You can see it here. And then, of course, you've got this rather large area of showers and storms, and certainly cloud cover that's covering Florida down all the way into the Caribbean. And you can see it here extending pretty far to the south. One of the things that we are seeing here is that at this point, that this is really a very disorganized mess right now. Certainly there's no sign of any kind of organization at all. There are some strong winds in the upper atmosphere that are keeping this thing from developing, and I think you're going to probably see those strong wind conditions continue for another couple of days, but eventually we'll probably see conditions that are a bit more favorable for development later this week. The key to all of this, I believe, is the fact that you're going to have this trough that is going to be creating this weakness down in the Gulf of Mexico. The outline of the trough will actually do two things. It will continue to pump moisture up over Florida and into the southeastern part of the United States. And you can see I've kind of drawn it here. The picture's a little bigger, but right in here we're probably going to have some kind of upper low eventually. And the surface low is likely to develop, I believe, probably somewhere down in this general area right in here. And what you may wind up may wind up happening is that the upper low and the surface low may become stacked from bottom to top over time. And this may help this thing develop. It may not exactly show us pure tropical characteristics. Maybe I think this could wind up being something more on the more subtropical in nature as we go into the end of the week. And of course, the other big question is, well, where does this all wind up? Well, that's the harder part of this equation. As we take a look at the European model, I tend to think, judging from what the models are showing here, that this eventually is going to wind up toward the northern part of the Gulf of Mexico, rather than moving northeastward and going into Florida. But one thing it will do, if you look at the upper flow here, and we're jumping here to Friday. It's pretty clear that, you know, here's the height line surrounding the upper low, and it runs just about like this. There's your upper low right there. But this flow is going to continue to feed moisture up from the Caribbean over Cuba into Florida and into the southeast and into the central Gulf states. Whether this thing develops or not, it is going to still mean for some heavy rains throughout Florida, the southeast, and the Gulf, and much of the central and eastern Gulf states. Maybe not so much in the western Gulf. It'll probably be dry there, but we're going to just have to wait and see how it plays out. And here's the European at 120 hours, where you have a much more well-defined upper low here that's being indicated. So this is something I think that we are certainly going to pay attention to. If you get a surface low that develops somewhere down here in the south central Gulf of Mexico, I think it would be the natural tendency for this thing to want to go northward or maybe even northwestward rather than taking a track out to the northeast. Just seems to me that that's the way this will play out. And by the way, given that we are at the end of May, I would tend to think that even if something were to develop, I couldn't envision this getting to be anything more than some kind of, marginal tropical system, or maybe, on the category of a subtropical depression or subtropical storm or a tropical storm. But, to see anything much beyond that, I don't think the atmosphere will be able to support it. I also don't think that water temperatures will be able to support it. At least that's based on what I'm seeing at the moment. Here's how it looks, by the way, on the full U.S. satellite view, and we'll bring that up front and center. You can see the wider view here on the GOES 16, and you can kind of make out where the base of that trough is. But again, emphasizing the fact that this is really a very disorganized mess when you look at it at the moment. Now, this may become less of a disorganized mess as we move through the end of the week, but we got to get there first. So in the meantime, I want to also jump now to, well, I got to find it first. There's my radar. But we do have some action going on with respect to severe weather. Let me just bring up the Storm Prediction Center's map and radar so we can look at the risk of severe weather. And this is as of 6:06 Eastern time. So if you're watching this later on, be sure to check your latest forecast from your local National Weather Service office regarding any kind of severe thunderstorm watches or warnings, because if you're seeing this a couple of hours from now, some of this stuff may be a bit out of date. Now, we've got a slight risk of severe weather tonight across much of east central Indiana, much of central Ohio, even up into the northwestern corner. The small blue box that appears there is a severe thunderstorm watch that has been posted late this afternoon inside that slight risk zone. The marginal risk outside of that, running down into parts of Tennessee and covers all of Kentucky and the western half of West Virginia, back into western Indiana, eastern Illinois. Out to the west, we've got a slight risk of severe weather in West Texas and on up through much of central New Mexico from south to north. Marginal risk around that, and an area of marginal risk in northeastern Colorado, parts of northwestern Kansas, western Nebraska, and southeastern Wyoming. And that's inside a general area of thunderstorms, some scattered thunderstorm activity extending up into the Rockies. And you can see how the thunderstorms across the Gulf states, getting to that time of year now where we start to see this more and more. But the fact that you've got all this tropical moisture that has now invaded the southern part of the United States for the last week or more will probably mean some fairly active afternoon and evening thunderstorm activity around the Gulf states, regardless of whether we get any kind of tropical system out of this or not. So that is going to be the big question, I think, for this week with regards to that. It also might be a question that we're going to have to look at over the weekend as to whether any of that moisture finds its way up the eastern seaboard, because I think that's something that we may have to consider depending on how the upper flow is and a few other things that are going on in the jet stream pattern. Now, here's the severe weather risk for Tuesday, just to jump ahead Small area of marginal risk in Pennsylvania, Maryland, on up into northern Virginia, most of West Virginia, and southeastern Ohio. And then you've got that kind of banana-shaped area that's on up in the northern plains there, across northwestern Iowa through South Dakota and into western Wyoming. And you've got another area of marginal risk again in West Texas. Otherwise, the rest of the West, it's just some general scattered thunderstorm activity. And of course, you're going to continue to see the tropical moisture coming into the state of Florida. Don't be surprised. There might be another several inches of rain or more over the next couple of days, and perhaps another several inches on top of that as we head toward the end of the week as far as the rainfall goes in the state of Florida. So why don't we take a look at Tropical Tidbits. Levi Cowan, by the way, if you're interested, tropicaltidbits.com. Levi has some things to say about this system. So you might want to give it a look. He always has great insight and great videos. If you want a channel recommendation, you really should go to his YouTube channel. He really does a great job in explaining, you know, how the evolution of these tropical systems. And I oftentimes share his videos when he does new videos. I do like to share them on my Facebook page. So they're you can either go directly to his channel, or you could certainly probably see the link when it comes up on my Facebook page, meteorologist Joe Cioffi. Okay, so let's take a look at where we're headed here with regards to rainfall amounts, because I think that's going to be important when we check out the models. I'm going to just go right to the eastern view, and we'll put up the GFS's total accumulated precip. And of course, Florida is going to be front and center here going through this week. Now, I'll take it as far out as we have at the moment, which is through Friday night. And the GFS, by the way, is running a little bit late today, so the new GFS runs a little bit on the slow side. But at least through Friday night, we're seeing much of central and south Florida in a 2 to as much as 4 inches of additional rain. I don't think that's unreasonable. It might actually be a little bit low, depending on how this system evolves. And of course, some more areas of patchy areas of heavy rain on up the west coast of Florida into Georgia, southwestern Georgia, and much of Alabama. So a lot of this is going to really depend ultimately on what we see as far as a track is concerned with any kind of low. And in fact, if you look at the late afternoon GFS, I'm going to go to the Atlantic view here, a bit better view. We can see the whole Gulf of Mexico. You can watch the low does try to form and come out. The GFS, for some reason, seems to want to take this on the eastern edge of the envelope with respect to the broad flow around the upper low and the trough that's going to be down through the central Gulf. The European today, as we noted earlier, I don't know, it just seems to me, we can't see the in-between frames, of course, but if you look at the isobar that is sitting, that includes the area surrounding the Yucatan Peninsula, it certainly is evident that pressures are low across much of the Gulf and in the Northwest Caribbean, and you're going to see a low pop out of there. It would seem to me that if the upper trough is the way it is and the structure of the upper air is the way it is, that you're probably going to want to favor this track more north than northeast. I don't know. The GFS just kind of looks a little bit bizarre to me. I think the European may have a better handle on this. It's just a smoother outcome, an outcome that makes more sense. And the other thing to consider, by the way, again, is whether are we going to be dealing with a tropical system? Is it going to be subtropical? That's a big question. I don't know how much development you're going to be able to get from this because of the fact that water temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico are not quite there yet. They're close, but they're not quite there yet to support anything other than maybe a minor to moderate tropical storm. Okay, if we even get to that point. And again, we're openly speculating here. We're not, by all means, we're not coming to any sort of conclusion, but the track like this will eventually shift the axis of heavy rain further westward. I mean, I think we're still going to wind up with some heavy rains in Florida, but you're going to probably wind up seeing heavier rains spreading westward across much of the Gulf states, maybe back as far west as western Louisiana. Maybe Texas, the Texas coast would be too far west out of this. So the big deal here, I think, is going to be rainfall. So that's what I think we should be watching going forward. Now, the east, as far as our weather is concerned here in the Northeast, you know, one of the things that is going to be important, and I'm going to put the upper air here, and I'm going to also, let's see, I guess we could start with the European. And back we go to the beginning. Okay, so there you have the jet stream pattern in the at the 18,000 foot level. I'll bring it up a little bit bigger here. Ridge off the southeast coast. You kind of got that troughing in the Gulf of Mexico. You also have a fairly strong jet that is setting up from northwestern Canada into New England. So that at least tries to bring down some drier air from Canada, which it's going to do after we get a cold front to pass through here tomorrow night with some showers ahead of it. But we're going to be into a northwest flow here for a couple of days, so that should keep things pretty quiet and calm. Then the ridge starts to build back. The trough drops down into the Gulf of Mexico. The jet in Canada lifts up to some degree. So this makes the weekend forecast a bit more difficult as far as my area is concerned. Also, is any of that tropical moisture that's coming into Florida and the southeast, is that going to eventually be drawn up the eastern seaboard in some way? Well, that's going to depend on whether there's something in that northern jet stream that models seem to have backed away from this idea just a little bit today. But I'm not 100% sold on this yet. Is there going to be something pivoting around in the north that's going to help to bring this tropical moisture northward, or is it going to stay kind of flat west to east? If it stays more flat west to east, I think that might favor a slightly more positive positive outcome for the latter part of the Memorial Day holiday weekend, which up until this morning, up until the mid-morning run of the GFS that came out, was kind of looking a bit tenuous for the second half. Not for Saturday so much, but for later Sunday into Monday. But that may come into question here if we don't have something in that northern jet to come down and bring the moisture up the East Coast. So maybe we could have a bit more of an optimistic view as far as the holiday weekend is concerned. Not yet going to put this in as definitive, but we'll see. I want to see a few more runs of the GFS to see whether this is going to be valid or not. So here we are. I'm going to back up and just start from the beginning. You'll see the showers here for tomorrow and into Wednesday. Then high pressure nicely builds in for the rest of the week and into the weekend, which is a good thing. And then we've got a weather front that's up to the north, and this is Saturday morning. There's an east-west front that is running up through upstate New York, and that doesn't get through here until early Sunday morning. It does bring this, it's almost like a back door, really. You've got a high that's coming down from Hudson's Bay, building southeastward, and it pushes it through here. Now, you also see the tropical system on the GFS bringing it into Florida in some form anyway. There lies the question here with respect to the rest of the weekend. Is that moisture going to be drawn northward? Is there a mechanism in the upper flow to come down and lift all that moisture up? Or is the back door just going to push southward and dry air from southeastern Canada and New England, does that wind up getting filtered southward, making for a fairly decent holiday weekend, but perhaps a little bit on the cooler side for Sunday and Monday? Saturday to me looks very warm. So does Friday. We should see temperatures up into the 80s both those days. Thursday looks like a good day. Wednesday looks like a day where we may start with some clouds early, but improve. I know I'm going backwards here, but it wound up setting up that way, where we got to the new GFS here for 12Z Sunday. I think we're going to have to kind of wait on whether this is something new. Notice the upper flow here is northwesterly in New England down to the mid-Atlantic states, the trough that's in the Gulf states. I'm going to go back a couple of model runs and show you the difference here, because I think this was important from overnight. You see, for the same time frame, there's no trough now in the Great Lakes. If there's no trough there, whatever moisture's around down to the south is going to stay there. It's not going to be able to lift up. It's got to have something to come down and kind of pull it up. This was a radical change from yesterday, the last several days. Now there doesn't seem to be any kind of shortwave energy dropping into the Great Lakes. I want to wait another day or two before, throwing in the towel on the idea that there's going to be some kind of trough digging down into the northern Great Lakes and lifting up this some of the moisture from the system up the East Coast, which would, kind of ruin things a bit for the second half of the weekend. If that trough doesn't show up there and we've got this nice, this flatter look like the model is showing now, well, then your outcome is going to be a lot more, a bit more positive as far as the weather goes in the Northeast. Maybe not overly positive, but it will be a bit more positive. You can see we do see showers and some scattered showers and storms generated here in the afternoon on Sunday, but it won't be some kind of organized rain with a strengthening onshore flow. This is what we're going to have to deal with as far as the weather is concerned, watching these models over the next couple of days. So let me come back to you guys. Signal's a little bit weak tonight for some reason. I'm seeing. So I hope you're getting everything nice and clear. We are. I'm going to come back to the board here. And okay, so Matthew Warman, I love. I got to say, I love when people say I hear of. It's almost like there's this gossip mill of people standing around talking about tropical storms developing. I find that very funny. I just basically answered your whole question here, so if you need to, just go back and look at the video. And Danville Boost, I don't believe it will turn into a hurricane. And yeah, you know what? It's quite possible that at most it is a tropical depression or a weak tropical storm. This is kind of open speculation that we're doing here, but I think it's fairly safe to say, given the climatology, the fact that we are still very much in the middle of May as of today. I mean, we're not even into June yet. Water temperatures are marginal at best. It's going to be a tough sell for this to become anything, much more than a subtropical storm or a tropical storm. If it gets there, it's got to organize first. There's too much noise going on. There's still conditions are not ideal in the upper atmosphere, so we're just going to have to watch, wait, and see on this. Water temperatures around Long Island, Stephen Franco, are still, let me just give that a quick check. They have been running cooler than average. The persistent onshore flow should help to bring water temperatures up. If the flow is coming in from the east or the east-southeast, that's the Gulf Stream waters out near 70 West usually tend to warm the waters up on that kind of wind, as opposed to, say, a west wind, which can be, ruinous to water temperatures. But just giving it a look here, they've actually warmed up into the mid-50s. The buoy 20 miles south of Fire Island is at 55. The water temperature New York Harbor entrance at 56. 15 miles east of Barnegat, it's 58. 54 at Hudson Canyon, Kings Point at 57. So temperatures here, water temperatures have warmed up into the middle 50s. So they seem to be kind of on course. This is about where they should be for this time of year, up in the mid 50s. If we get a prolonged west wind, that will make those water temperatures problematic. But if we go into an onshore flow again for several days. We can see those water temperatures, Stephen, jump up into the low 60s fairly quickly. Oh, Wayne S., thank you so much for hitting Super Chat tonight. Really appreciate it. Yes, cigar on you. I'll go for it. I'm all for it, in fact. Rainfall in Florida has been on the order of about 5 to 10 inches in some places, not all, Matthew Warman. We are going to see, additional rainfall as we go through the coming week. Okay. Wayne, thank you. Really, I really appreciate you doing that. Finally, you made a live, and yeah, it's 6 o'clock has been the time we've been doing it lately, and I know there've been a few days where I've had to jump the time around, but I was able to get it 6 o'clock, and I think that's where we'll be probably for this week. No problem, Stephen. Anytime. Ruru 25. Congrats on the grandson. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. He's a little over a week old. Actually, now he's 9 days old. And gaining weight and doing really well, and everything is good. I get my daily pictures of him, and it's really cool being a granddad. It really is. And yeah, thanks, Wayne. Really appreciate it. I appreciate the kind words there. Let's see. Danville Boost, we've already addressed your question with regards to what the strength of this may or may not be. Just trying to get Anthony, or if something does develop in the Gulf, would the GFS have gotten it at least somewhat correct by showing something in the long range? Well, Anthony, broken clocks are right twice a day, and I mean, it's been doing this for the last 2.5 weeks, and it hasn't just been showing a tropical system. I mean, it's been blowing things up occasionally to full-blown Category 3 and 4 hurricanes. I mean, that was just insanely ridiculous, and obviously part of the problem. I really, once the other models, particularly once the Europeans started showing it, that's when it kind of said to me that we should pay attention, and I think that's where we are now. By the way, the National Hurricane Center is talking about this. They did put out a tropical weather outlook earlier today, and this is kind of an indicator that they've got their eyes on it anyway, and they're rating no development in the next 2 days, 0% chance, but a 20% chance going in days 3, 4, and 5. So I think the rather cautious nature of this is the fact that you've got this big disorganized mess, the time of year, all these factors that would work against a tropical cyclone development. Again, I just want to emphasize, regardless of development, rain is going to be an issue for Florida and for the southeast U.S. and for the Gulf states. Z is Greenwich Mean Time. Okay, so it's basically what time it is in Greenwich, England. It's a universal time that that we use on all weather maps. Okay, so we're coming up on half past the hour of 6 Eastern Time. Thanks everybody for being here today. We'll keep you updated on Facebook with the Joe Rayo, Joe Cioffi Show, the Joe and Joe Weather Show. I think tonight we're going to do it at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. So join us on Facebook, either on my Facebook page, meteorologist Joe Cioffi, or on Joe Rayo's Facebook page, Joe Rayo Weather. That I think will be at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. At least that's the plan at the moment. Those of you who would like to support my my channel can do it in a number of different ways. You can do it through Super Chat, which I really appreciate, or a real easy way that doesn't cost you a dime. You can shop on Amazon by using the link that I have up on the descriptor to this live stream and on the descriptor to the videos. I'm participant in the Amazon Services Associates program. It's a way for my channel to earn fees. You shop, you get your stuff. Amazon throws me back some coin for bringing them you as a customer, and everybody's happy. So I appreciate those of you who have been using that Amazon link, and those of you who have been hitting Super Chat. Thank you very much. goes a long way to what I would like to do one day, which is to basically just do this, be all website and YouTube channel all the time. All right, folks, going to call it a night. Have a great rest of your evening. We will see you tomorrow.